Welcome in everyone to the second episode of our now long-standing series on the channel where we look at the old rarity most expensive game lists and we answer the question, if you bought these games when these articles were first published for the prices listed, would you have made money or lost money, and how much? Today we are going to be looking at the old article published by Pricecharting, 15 rare PlayStation 2 games, the most expensive PlayStation 2 games, which says it was published here Friday, August 7th, 2009. But if you go down to this section here, you can open up 2012 and you can open up the February and you can see that they updated the PlayStation 2 guide February 2012. And then I also used the Wayback Machine to confirm that this article has not been touched since 2012. All of the pricing data you're going to see is coming from price charting averages. Of course, if you're price checking your own stuff, always make sure to look at actual sold listings to get a better idea of the prices. With that said, let's jump into the list here. The 15 most rare expensive PlayStation 2 games of 2012, which I'm actually going to start off with the honorable mentions here because I did debate you guys a little bit. As you saw in the thumbnail, I did have Rule of Rose there. In 2012, this game didn't even make it into the top 15 list. You can see here it had a factory sealed price of $79. But don't worry, when we get to the end of the video and we look at the percentage gained or lost on these games, I did include Rule of Rose so you can see just how much it's moonshot since 2012. What do you think is going to be the number one game on this list? The list is going by factory sealed prices, and I'll give you a hint, it is not a horror game at the number one slot. Let me know your guesses in the comments below. Starting off, number 15, we have Dot Hack Quarantine. Factory sealed price was $84 at the time, used price $63. This is one you guys are probably familiar with, as part 4 Quarantine is still very expensive as far as I know. Back then, honestly, all of the Dot Hack games had quite a bit of value to them relative to the time frame, right? We gotta go back to 2012. There weren't many expensive games at the time. Here, the article actually mentions that the previous games in the series, Infection, Mutation, and Outbreak, can be found brand new for less than $45 each. So I guess they weren't that expensive or rare, but I remember always searching after them. Either way, Dot Hack Quarantine starts off the list. Number 14, we have Wild Arms Alter Code F. Factory sealed price at $84, used price at $34. I'm actually pretty sure that this game is also still very expensive. This list is starting off pretty strong. Wild Arms Alter Code F is an enhanced remake of the original game on PlayStation 1 and the last Wild Arms games released on the PlayStation 2. And of course released in 2005, which is pretty late in the PlayStation 2 life cycle. I think PS2 games were still being printed in like 2012, maybe even 2013. I think a FIFA game is the last game ever printed on PS2. Someone fact check that for me. At number 13, we have one of my personal favorites, Digimon Rumble Arena 2, factory sealed at $88, used price at $26. Digimon or Rumble Arena 2 is a fighting game similar to Super Smash Bros., which is a true statement if you take Super Smash Bros. And remove absolutely all of the depth. This game is as stripped down as a Super Smash Bros. Clone as you could possibly get. Fun if you're a Digimon fanatic for about an hour. This is one that I did chase after myself though, as I do like collecting Digimon games. The PlayStation 2 version is the least valuable of the 3 versions released. For whatever reason, they thought it was necessary to release this on PS2, GameCube, and original Xbox. Pretty crazy to see that this was near the tippy top back in 2012. At number 12, we have Budokai Tenkaichi 3 again. This one also appeared on the Rarest Wii games list of 2012. Factory sealed price at $89, used price at $32. It's interesting seeing that this was also on the PS2 list at the time. The consensus back then was that it's really rare on the Wii and not so rare on the PS2. This article says that the Wii version is more expensive, but both versions are rare. I've never really considered this game all that rare, but Dragon Ball Z fans absolutely love it, which means it always has a ton of demand going for it. Basically one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made. This is one where I'm super interested to see how much it's gained since 2012. At number 11, we have another one of my favorite games from this generation, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, factory sealed for $90, used price for $32. If you guys aren't familiar with the Dark Alliance games, they're these hack and slash RPGs that were a ton of fun for couch co-op. The game was originally set to be published by Universal in December 2003, but in September 2003, Interplay canceled the deal and decided to self-publish and release in January 2004. And yeah, the game never released on GameCube, so you can only find Dark Alliance 2 on PS2 and Xbox. For the longest time, it was also super sought after on the original Xbox, but I'm sure we'll talk about that more when we cover the Xbox games. At number 10, we have kind of a weird one here, The Document of Metal Gear Solid 2, factory sealed $92, used price $20. This is one that I didn't even know existed until many years into my collecting career. The Document of Metal Gear Solid 2 is an interactive documentary of Metal Gear Solid 2. It includes a database of character models, the entire soundtrack, every cutscene from the game, and other making of materials like storyboards, scripts, and development timeline. Now, this isn't actually Metal Gear Solid 2 the game, so of course course, this had a niche audience of people who were looking to purchase it. This is another one that I don't see people talk about that much anymore, so really curious to see what's happened with this one over the years. At number 9, we have another dot hack game. This time we have from the GU series, Volume 1 Rebirth. Factory sealed copies at 95, used copies at 40. So there we go. These are some of the more expensive dot hack games that I was thinking of. The article says here that the NTSC versions of all the dot hack GU titles are fairly rare, but Rebirth is the most expensive of the 3. It's kind of interesting when Volume 1 is actually more expensive than 2 and 3. With the other dot hack games, we saw Part 4 be much more expensive than Part 1, 2, or 3. Did any of you guys actually play the dot hack games back in the PS2 lifecycle? Let me know in the comments. This was a series that I watched growing up, but I never really played the games. At number 8, we have the first Atlas game making its way onto the list, Wizardry, Tale of the Forsaken Land. Factory sealed price $99, used price $13 only for this one. Wizardry is a series that I am not familiar with. Apparently it's a long-running first-person role-playing series from the PC. All I know this game for is being rare and published by Atlas. They mention it here too. The game is published by Atlas, who's notorious for their small print runs and rare games. That's all that I did know about Wizardry, and that's all that I still know about Wizardry. Just a damn hard game to find, be it sealed or CIB. Moving on to number 7, we have kind of a weird one here. Grandia 2. Factory sealed price at $99, used price at $14. Grandia 2, of course, being a remake of the Sega Dreamcast game that originally released in 2000. Grandia is a series that I have never played myself, but I've always been familiar that they're just kind of expensive RPG games. Kind of interesting though, the article says that the PS2 version was criticized for lower frame rates and reduced color and texture quality. It's always kind of weird when a game gets ported over and it's worse. Either way, Grandia 2 on PS2 was apparently selling for almost $100 factory sealed in 2012. That's pretty crazy. At number 6, we have Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. Factory sealed price at $100, used price at $33. This is one that you guys are probably familiar with, as the Jurassic Park Operation Genesis game has dominated rarity lists for both PS2 and Xbox for many, many years. I've actually always wanted to try out this game, but have just never gotten around to it, and I don't think I've ever owned a physical copy for the PS2 or Xbox. The article does also mention that the Xbox version is much more rare and sells for nearly $200, which is double what they're quoting for the PS2 version here. Kind of crazy to see. At number 5, we have what I think is the weirdest one we've seen so far, Final Fantasy XI Vanadiel Collection 2008. Factory sealed price at $120, and the used price is even at $35 on this. The collection includes 4 games that I don't really want to go through the hassle of butchering the pronunciations of. The game was released a couple years after the PlayStation 3 when the PS2's popularity was already waning. The game didn't sell well because most of the users had already moved on to PS3 and there were problems playing this game on the PS3. I'm really curious to see if this game has kept up with collectors, because I assume back in 2012 there was still a decent player base for the game, which might have been helping to boost the collectability of the game. Not one I ever see modern day collectors talking about, so I don't really like its 2022 outlook. At number 4, we have the first special edition type game make the list, Resident Evil 4 Premium Edition. Factory sealed for $130, used price at $19. Resident Evil 4 Premium Edition includes the game in a steelbook case, an artwork book, a documentary DVD, and an Ada Wong art cell. The Premium Edition on Resident Evil 4 is actually pretty damn nice, and I'm pretty sure you can still buy used ones today for a pretty reasonable price. It's a nice little collector piece for what I consider one of the best games in the Resident Evil franchise. At number 3, we actually have another special edition making it to the list, Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence Limited Edition. Factory sealed price at $130, used price at $37. If you pre-ordered Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, you got the limited edition version, which includes a DVD with cutscenes from the game edited into a movie. It was never reprinted and never made available outside of that pre-order time period. Subsistence Limited Edition is one that I chased after for years, but never pulled the trigger on. I think I finally bought myself a factory sealed copy of this game a year ago, and it actually wasn't that much more expensive than what's being quoted here in 2012. For the longest time, this dominated rarity lists, but these days it definitely didn't keep up with some of the other games. At number 2, we have a total shocker here as far as I'm concerned, Capcom vs SNK 2. Factory sealed price at $150, used price only $13 though. The game is no longer available at retail, and due to licensing issues with the character owned by 2 different companies, the game will most likely not be re-released. I am a pretty casual fighting game fan. I play my Mortal Kombats, my Street Fighters, and my Capcom vs games, but I have no idea how sought after or coveted this particular fighting game would have been. Fighting game fans, let me know in the comments. Capcom vs SNK 2. Is that one of the best fighting games on PS2? Did you have trouble tracking it down? I did not expect to see this at number 2. Which brings us to the number 1 rarest, most expensive PlayStation 2 game, which is a shout out to every single Patreon who helps support the channel, as well as the YouTube members. I can't do it without you guys. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, hit the like button. It really helps out. The number 1 game on this list, which actually isn't all that surprising, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Factory sealed price being quoted at $280 and the used price at $29. If you've been collecting for a while, you're probably familiar that Marvel vs. Capcom 2 has always been expensive. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 used to sell for $70 to $80 in used condition. There we go, like I was saying, always been expensive. Until the game was released on Xbox Live and PlayStation Network in early 2009. After the digital version was released, used prices dropped to their current $30 range, but the brand new versions of the game still sell for $200 to $280. That's pretty darn crazy. $280 for a factory sealed copy in 2012 is like, it's not that high of a price when we look at it now through the lens of 2022, but back in 2012, paying even $100 for a video game was like, that was a pretty damn expensive game. Very interesting to see that the top of the list is dominated by Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And now we're gonna swap over to my spreadsheet and see just how much these games have gone up or down since this article was published in 2012. So here is the spreadsheet now that I made, which tracks the difference between 2012 and 2022 and shows the difference in pricing as shown by the price chart's averages. As you can see, and what is probably not that surprising to most of you, it's almost all green across the board. Starting over on the factory sealed side here, it is actually Wizardry that had the biggest percentage gain, jumping from $99 in 2012 up to $1,000 in 2022. Other massive gains go to Tenkaichi 3, which jumped up $386 or 433%. Dot Hack Quarantine also going up $386 or almost 460%. And also the previous number 1 also jumped massively. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is now $1,482 on price charts, or a change of 429%. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, very expensive in 2012, still very expensive in 2022. The only 2 losers on the sealed side of things are actually Final Fantasy XI, which I was kind of expecting that to be the case. It went down $34, 28%, and Dot Hack GU Rebirth, which actually lost almost 50% of its value. I have to assume that the GU games lost a lot of their value once that re-release happened. I didn't follow them too closely over the years, so I was a bit surprised to see just how cheap they are now in 2022. And if you would have bought every game in 2012, you would have had to spend $1,730. And in 2022, they are now averaging $5,567 for a total gain of $3,837, or 222%. Even as a traditional investment, that's pretty damn good over a 10-year period to triple your money. Over on the used side of things, it's much of the same. Again, the only game that actually lost value is Dot Hack GU Rebirth, which lost over 40% of its CIB value too, falling down to $22.60 now. And other massive gainers include Wild Arms, Alter Code F going up by 404%, Dot Hack Quarantine again, where the CIB went up by $241 or 382%. Once again, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, now very expensive, even as a CIB, it's $170, up 486% from its 2012 price. And even Tenkaichi 3 on PS2 is now very expensive as a CIB, pricing in at almost $148, up 362%. Almost all of these PS2 games have gone up substantially over the past 10 years, which again might not sound that surprising to you, but I encourage you to check out the Wii list after this video, and the results on that top 15 list aren't nearly as generous as the PS2 is. With the CIB games, had you bought them all in 2012, you would have spent $440. They are now worth around $1,443 for a $1,000 gain, or once again, over triple your investment. And last thing here, I did go to price charts and grab the current 2022 most expensive factory sealed games, as well as the most expensive CIB PlayStation 2 games. Of all the games we looked at today, the only ones that still remain on the most expensive list are Marvel vs. Capcom 2 factory sealed, Wizardry factory sealed, and Dot Hack Quarantine CIB. Now, PlayStation 2 collecting is largely dominated by these horror titles. Over in factory sealed, we do see games with huge demand like God of War and Kingdom Hearts taking the list. Otherwise, it's many of the same games that we've grown very familiar with over the years. Hopefully someone in 2032 finds this video and does an update just like I did. Hit like if you enjoyed the content, subscribe if you want to see more for it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.